It's really beautiful to have a space where I think we as young women can discuss matters that are like concerning us, especially in spaces where we feel that trying to navigate in spaces where we feel as though sometimes our starting line is a bit behind what our male counterparts have. So I think for me personally, I think I'd really like to know from each one of you how you feel that the values that were instilled in your childhood, like the way in which you grew up, the things that your parents and your community taught you, how do you think that has now affected you as a liberal, so-called free woman trying to navigate in the sense as simple as walking outside the door, the interactions that you have with people, to as big as being a professional in your field. So how do you think that your childhood has almost influenced where you are now?
Oh, should I go first?
Yeah.
Well, I was raised by women, all very strong women. My grandmother, my mother, my aunties. My mother's siblings, they only have one male.
Okay.
And in my family, I don't think they really saw the use of a man until they needed to have children. Because my grandfather died at a very early age of his married life. So after the last born, he just passed off. And so there were all these young, and the last born is a boy. So all these young women had to figure out how to survive in a patriarchal society. And they did. And so I grew up in this setting where I saw the women doing everything from farming to you name it. And so basically I grew up with this mentality that I can do whatever I want and I don't really need to have a man around to do all of those things. And so as of now, as I speak, I have a hard time asking for help.
Okay.
And so that's one of the disadvantages of that. There are certain things that people actually have to point it out and say, you can actually ask for help, and things like that. But I think it also affects the way I look at relationships, in the sense that I don't see myself as, oh, I'm this weak woman that I need a man to be around to help me do this, to help me do that, to help me do that. And then I date guys and they're like, I need to feel like you actually need me in your life. And at this point, I don't feel like you need me in your life because you're doing everything, it's a heavy thing, I'm lifting it, and all those things. So I think there are advantages and disadvantages for me. And the advantages, I learned that I could be what I wanted to be, I could do whatever I wanted to do. And for me, I think the disadvantages, I'm unable to ask for help even when I need it. And so that's what I'm currently I think working on. But society, my family did not they didn't seem to care about what society actually thought because they were all women. They just needed to survive a society where they couldn't own anything. And so they figured that out, and I was raised in that environment, so I have to always figure things out for myself.
And do you think that growing up in a space with a lot of feminine energy, do you think that almost the deficit of the masculine energy sort of affected you, like you're saying, how you sometimes feel like you can't ask for help? Do you think that maybe if there was that masculine energy, things would have been a bit more balanced?
Yeah, I think so. And for very, very, as a kid, I didn't see the use for men. Even now, there's still certain things I say, comments I make, and my friends will be like, you can't say things like that. It's sexist. The things I say are kind of sexist.
So I was raised by my mother and father. I have two younger siblings, and my parents really made a conscious decision when they had children to reject a lot of things about the way that they were both raised. They just were like, we have other ideas. We're going to try new things, whether it be food or spirituality or discipline. There were a lot of things that they were like, we're changing, we're rewriting this. And they were really concerned about balancing their roles. So they separated when I was like 8 years old, and they made a conscious choice to continue to live very close to each other. So the whole time I was living with them, I could walk from one to the other. So they, even though they were like fighting with each other, they were like, for these kids, we're gonna do things a certain way. So I think I had a very high expectation, and they were very, as far as gender roles, you know, you can do anything. It doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy, you can wear anything. There was not a lot of restriction in that regard. And I was really taught that, like, the sky is the limit, you know, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve. So I think, in a way, coming from that situation, I mean, I'm glad I was indoctrinated to believe all those things, but at the same time, to leave, it's like a very beautiful bubble. And leaving that bubble, I find that I'm often disappointed in the world. Like, oh, come on, we already know that this is a useless way to be doing things. Why has everyone not moved on? You know, I find myself impatient.
Okay.
Why does this archaic way of doing things still survive? It's obvious that it's, you know, not the best. So I'm constantly having to like exercise patience and understand maybe why people are still attached to things that my parents rejected for me. And I also think when you have something that you rebel against in your upbringing, it gives you a fight to fight. And then when you're like, no, I appreciate what they did and I'm glad they did it that way, then you're kind of standing there like, so now what do I do? A little bit. So I think, yeah, those are both like pieces of it. But I think the positive side would just be like the level of confidence that was instilled in all of us. Like I was never told that I couldn't do something. Maybe even, there may even be a negative side to that of just like assuming, oh, the same thing you're talking about, I can just do it myself. Yeah. That same idea. I'm not going to wait for anyone else to step in.
So in the conflict between growing up in a space where you could really make decisions and choose for yourself, and now being exposed to a space where things are a bit more sort of standardized, a bit more formal, do you think that you've had to compromise a bit of the freedom that you had when you grew up to sort of just at least find some sort of way of
I think there's a lot of kind of navigating, like, how much do I care to please society, and what am I willing to compromise to do that? And there's a lot of experimentation. Am I gonna start changing the way I look? And then I'll try that. How does that make me feel? Because all this stuff is within our control, but it's easy to kind of forget that and just assimilate. And so there's a lot of like boundaries to define.
Yes.
Yeah, really. That thing about boundaries, because I grew up kind of free range. My parents were very busy. We got dumped a lot at our grandmother's houses. I mean, my parents made time for us, but my mom chose to keep working, and so I had this example of a woman who was like, it was never an issue, the fact that she had kids, and then she was working, and dad was working, and they had work. And I was kind of raised by books and this kind of wild place, because it was both my grandmother, one of them had goats in the back and would like milk them and kill her own chickens. Another one had this big sprawling yard and bushes, and there were books everywhere. So I would just kind of roam and, you know, come back when it's meal times, come back when we're going home.
Sounds like we're up in the village.
So growing up, and I think that gives you a certain level. You don't need validation for certain things, and you don't need a lot of the anxiety that I feel like some other people have around just simple decisions like, what do you want to do with your life? For me, it's like, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do it. And that becomes such a political thing for so many other people who, why do you feel so comfortable doing this? You don't have a job. You're not making enough money. Why are you fine? You know, like and that recently, especially this year, has become a problem for me, because I didn't realize how much, in terms of, you grew up free range. So having people lay down certain boundaries for you, you have to dress a certain way. You're a boss now. You need a man. You need it, and it's like there's.
I could high five you on that one.
It's just like. why?
Why?
You know, and when you ask them, they can't give you a good answer, but they still feel the need to try to smash you into this little hole. And for me recently, especially the last 2 years, where it's just because I'm also very stubborn. My mom's favorite story about me is how I taught myself to read as a child. She walked in the room one day and I was reading a book, and she'd been trying and trying and trying, and I would just leave.
To know that you were doing it.
So yeah, I would just like take like an encyclopedia and go and sit in a corner and like look through it. But I've always loved words and how they look on pages. But yeah, that thing of with other people, then it starts kind of dragging you down. So I always talk about safe space for myself. I'm very comfortable with drawing. I'm very comfortable sitting in a corner by myself in a room full of people. And I don't think it's weird. I think it's weird that people think that someone having a moment to themselves is weird, and are not okay with like silence and things like that. So this year has been really rough because there's been a lot of like weight around, especially with my friends getting married. I got out of a relationship a couple of years ago, and it was like, you have to find another one, and I'm like, why? There's things that are just, I think for me just now, just very confusing still. I mean, I've seen enough of the behavior and seen maybe a little bit of why people feel the need, like in terms of pressure and stuff, but it's like, why do you choose to accept the weight from this thing? Especially when, you know, like my space, I'm happy with it. I mean, we went from mud and like mosquitoes, there's still mosquitoes, but like there's a form to it, and I can't even enjoy that because of other people's weight.
So, I mean, you spoke briefly about how people sort of put boundaries in place, and perhaps I want to ask this to all of you. How do you think then what do you think are the unique challenges that as women who have decided to take the scenic route or the route less traveled, what unique challenges, like, I mean, I think personally for me, how I've seen people have sort of warned me against certain things because they're like, okay, you're moving up, but you just need to know that the higher you move, the harder it's going to be for you to get someone who's going to take care of you, be that partner sort of thing. So as someone as people who are really making moves in their industry, the three of you, how do you think, what unique challenges do you think that you face that maybe some of the men that you've interacted with in the same sort of positions don't really go through?
Unique challenges. Isn't everything we do a challenge? You know, we have all the things against you. You're black, you're a woman, you're in Africa, and I wouldn't say I've moved up the ladder, but I have a unique way of. I'm saying unique in the sense that I totally ignore the world.
Okay.
So I have no TV. If I want entertainment, I'll watch a movie. Or Trevor Noah for news. Or Facebook for news in Ghana and things like that. So sometimes, and I haven't been on Facebook for a while. So for me, I try not to see what is happening around me because I'm an emotional being and I tend to react very negatively to things that I don't agree, like things that get to me, you know. So I haven't really been in the corporate world for that long, but as I go with my own business and my own way of doing things, I've been very lucky in the sense that I tend to be given the opportunity to do things my way. And since I started working with trying to run my own business, anytime I encounter a problem where I have to deal with male patriarchy, I have been fortunate enough to have another man who be like Omon or so. They are feminists who come up and say, you know what, we can't do this, or this lady is really, this thing has to be done for her and stuff like that. So I've been lucky in that space. I don't know why. I don't know why I've been that lucky. I've been lucky in that space. So I can't really say that I have encountered that patriarchy within the workspace, but in personal life, that's where you get it all the time. And interestingly enough, it's not just from men also. I'm also getting it from women, you know, and I have, if you have to do certain things, you're getting too educated. I remember my mom, who happens to be who was a gender activist, asking me this question when I finished my master's degree in the UK. So she's like, so are you getting married or you're doing your PhD? And I was like, what? She sends me a an email. I'm like, wait, what? What sort of question is that? So I called her, I'm like, why would you ask me that? She's like, well, I just want to know, would you be staying there and doing your PhD, or are you going to come home and getting married? I said, I don't know. And even if I'm doing my PhD, I can still choose to get married or not to get married. I said, well, most men don't like very educated women, which is true from experience. Most, not all. And there's always that one person out there who's willing to compromise with your education. And so I decided to come back, not get married, not do my PhD, and run a business. You know, and so that was the path I chose. But I find out that we get it from both sides. As to the more educated you get, the less attractive you are to quite a number of men, and so the narrower your field of. If you are interested in being with a partner, the narrower that field becomes. If you're not, please be happy.
So sad though. Like, someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone's like, it's so sad that women always have to kind of gather around and talk about their problems, but you wonder how often a group of guys sit down and like talk about their masculinity and the implications. And,
right.
You know, like,
am I making the right choices that a woman's gonna go for me?
You know?
And it's I think maybe we need to direct a bit more of our conversations about women towards men, and because my experience in relationships and stuff was that men are actually quite fragile. A lot of guys are going through so much stuff and they don't have the words for it. They don't have the language, and if they can feel okay, like just being men, maybe they'll just like leave us alone to do our own thing as well. You know, like, because a lot of what you were saying, like about a guy who will compromise on your education, I feel like just that, like, as a statement.
Because that's I can't think of another word that I can use, because it's like, and here's the interesting thing that I've come to notice: when a guy who is a feminist meets a woman who is a feminist and they want to get with this person, the environment around them discourages them. And they start putting ideas into their head, or they start telling them things, and you're like, okay, so what's going on? And this poor guy ends up being very confused as to whether he's actually making the right choices. You know, and the reverse is a woman who wants to get as high as possible in her education and being told that she cannot get a man in her life if she gets very far. And so you have these two groups of people. The man wants to be with an educated woman, but society is telling him that's the wrong move. This woman wants to be educated, but society is telling her that's the wrong move, you know. And so you have that, we have these two, it's the same, but at the same time different. And yes, I agree with you that this conversation needs to start including men, and how men also think about some of these situations that they come up against.
And also thinking about how, I mean, you're speaking now about relationships and how it's when you're a woman with a man who understands the sort of life that a woman lives, that is a feminist. I think sometimes the continuum between like private life and public life sort of sometimes becomes a really difficult thing to navigate, because sometimes men are accepting of a woman being very open and very sure of herself in a public space, but when it becomes now into the private life, like you're speaking about personal relationships, then it becomes, and also when women are critiqued a lot, the private, I mean, with about something that they're doing in the public space, their private life also becomes something that becomes part of the conversation, which is, I think, something that men don't necessarily have the same sort of. Their public and private life are usually quite separate in terms of their profession and all of that. But like with social media, I don't know, you are very active on social media, and just also in terms of your profession, how do you think that social media has helped you, and the identity that you formed on social media? Do you think that social media has assisted you in terms of your creativity, in terms of putting out the message that you're trying to get as a professional, reaching out to other women as well? Do you think that social media has helped you in that regard, or do you think that social media in some ways has hindered the process of that?
Social media is full of idiots. Okay. I'm sorry. Quite a number of people over there are just. I don't think it's done anything for me, because the way I am is the way I am in everything I do, and I'm not gonna excuse myself for it. It's just who I am. So the way I talk here, the way I talk at home, is the same way I speak on social media. And it offends you, well, that's your problem, not mine. It's my space, and I'm using it to speak. So for me, I haven't really seen it doing anything much for me, changing who I am or helping me in either way.
I find that I use it for my business, and my business partner and I both post regularly. We have a schedule of who posts on which day. We have a third-party app that we use to like build out the grid so that it's visually pleasing, and I hate it. Like, it feels so contrived and so like it's marketing. It's commercial, and it's like the more genuine and organic I can make it feel, the more compelling it will be, and the more followers we'll get. And I'm like, well, that's gross. And so my personal presence there tends to be very minimal. Like, every once in a while I'll take a photo of sometimes just like nothing, like the ceiling, and I'm like, oh, okay, this sparked something, and I think other people should see it. But for the most part, it's like, I don't want my private life there. I mean, I know that the way that social media is making money is by harvesting people's information, right? It's affecting elections, it's affecting businesses, of like decisions of large businesses, and so I'm very, very hesitant to like put my personal opinions, anything. It's a way that I connect with family, like who's far away. So I'm constantly like, could I quit Facebook? Could I quit Instagram? And I was like, well, I'm never ever gonna see what my cousins' children look like growing up if I don't keep everything that. And maybe this is like really a jaded way to look at it. I think people who are a little younger maybe feel differently, because when I was a teenager, I would go with my friend. We would go to someone's house. We would sit together and we would read each other poetry that we'd written. Like, it was the same kind of sharing and expressive thing, but it was in a physical space. There's no record of those events, you know. No, the public didn't need to see it for it to have meaning. It was just for the six of us to kind of like try stuff out. And so doing what I did very privately, I think now it's normal to do it in this like more public sphere, and it really turns me off. It's, like, I'm doing it for work, and I kind of like, it kind of, there's a little part of my soul that's like dies when I do it. And we try, I'm like, okay, if we're gonna do this, let's have it be positive, you know? Let's like lift up voices that aren't getting lifted up. Let's talk about political stuff. It can certainly do good. I get my news there. So it's not like it's all rotten, but it's just so, there's so much exploitation, and it happens so quickly, and it really makes me like nervous.
Yeah, that's true, and uneasy as well.
Yeah.
So how important is it for you to define yourself as a woman, beyond just being a woman biologically? So the fact that your anatomy is set up in a certain way, how important is it for you when you enter a space to make it clear that I am a woman that is making clothes, or I am a woman who's creating spaces? Is the identity of being a woman important in those spaces, or do you think that perhaps the gender roles are becoming a bit less extreme, and you would rather prefer to be just a human being in that sort of regard?
Yeah, like me again, the free range thing, but I had 2 brothers as well, and there was like 6 or 7 cousins, and we'd wear each other's clothes, like you'd all have a shower and we'd all get like an oversized t-shirt, and that was like the outfit for the day. So it's a struggle for me to step into spaces where people are like, oh, you know, like, let me carry that for you. And the whole concept, I think I never really thought of myself as a girl, ever. And then to get into spaces where people are like, oh, no, you're growing up and you have to do this. And it's very just bizarre to me. It's not in this world, like, I think now, maybe that was useful when people had a bit more focus on reproduction, but there's so many humans now that the fact, like, why would you limit yourself to just that one definition of yourself? You know, I think there's aspects to being a woman that are interesting and fulfilling for some women, and they enjoy defining themselves by those things. But for me, I have almost bigger things to worry about than what my body manifests as. Yeah.
So then translating that into family, and perhaps the family that then you would create, how do you think that your need or your desire not to really define yourself as a woman will affect the way in which you go about raising children, or the way in which you go about, if you want to raise children, the way in which you go about being in an intimate relationship? Is it important for the other people in your private life to also understand that I'm a woman, but I mean, that's not how I define myself?
And I don't even think it's that even that much of a statement. I don't think it's even on the level of I'm a woman, but that's not how I define myself. I think it's just like human. Like, and if we have, and this question about I want a PhD, I'm gonna get a PhD. If you can't handle that, you're not meant for me. And and if even in terms of the work I make, and where it is, I'm not exactly happy with it. But if you come, there people come to the space and they get it straight away. There people come to the space and they whine. There's mud, there's bugs, there's like, I'm like, you have the outdoors and you have grass. There's gonna be bugs. I'm not gonna spray them and kill them because they'll just come back the next morning anyway, and it's not necessary. So I think just that thing about building tribe, you know, if people get it, they get it, and if they don't, they're just not entitled to my space. And being a bit, for me, this year has been like trying to be a bit more firm about those things, and being like, listen, I've known you for a long time, but we're not friends. Because just that, and then trying to teach people as well, you know, like, it's not about the fact that you have a vagina or a penis, or that you wore dresses and played with dolls, or you know, like, it's not about that. Like, what's your purpose? Why are you here? What are you doing with your life? What do you enjoy? You know, like, how are you existing moment to moment? And is that, however that isn't, like, what is that? And that's the essence of life for me. So if we're gonna focus on silly things, then I don't want to be with you. And I guess I would want kids, but I'm not. It's the sort of thing that I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I'm always thinking big picture. And when people, it's not to say that I don't have good friends and amazing friends, but the friendships are sustained through this sort of big picture thinking, and not through, I don't know, like gossip, like getting together to gossip. And I never understood those things.
So in a way, you're saying that in some ways, making these limited labels, like this is a woman, this is a man, sort of limits the way in which we interact with each other, even before we enter a space.
And maybe distracts from like other more interesting questions.
Exactly. And people do that because they're afraid. It's like, if I don't define you, I don't know how to relate to you.
Yes.
And I'm not brave enough to ask you other questions about your life, or about, like what you enjoy, or what, what your dreams are and your hopes are and your future is and what your challenges are. It's easier to see you as a little predefined dot than as a human being.
I mean, I have a 1-year-old who we haven't cut his hair. He's like really cute, and so many people right away they need to know, is this a girl or a boy?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's pretty irrelevant. Like,
yeah.
he doesn't care.
Exactly.
It's like it's not going to be a part of your interaction with him. It's a fear of, like, I need to know who I'm dealing with. I need to know which preconceptions to apply here.
For a long time, I think it was around the age of 10. So I grew up knowing that I was a girl, but not a girl. I don't know whether that makes any sense, but like, I didn't realize how much of a girl I was, because I grew up as a tomboy. And so for a long time, I had, up until university, until I graduated university, all my friends were male. I couldn't stand women, I'm sorry. I couldn't stand women, I didn't know. I found them petty, and probably it's because I didn't find the right caliber of women to hang out with. I found them petty, gossipy, and all manner of things, and I couldn't deal with that. And I always found out that I could roll with guys much easier. But in high school, it was in high school I actually started realizing that I was female. I knew I was a girl, but that concept did not sit, I didn't understand it. It was in high school that I realized I was female. When I was about 12, I had my first crush, but that still did not make, I had like 3-4 crushes, all in each different class, and I still didn't understand that. I just liked these guys really, really well, and I just thought, okay, I want to be friends with them. But it was in high school that somebody actually asked me out, and I started to start getting what they were coming at, and I was so pissed off. I was so angry. I was like, what is wrong with you? You and I are the same, that kind of mentality. Until I got to university, my first year of university, people did not know whether I was male or female. A lot of people could not figure out whether I was male or female. This is with this big ass, by the way. People could not figure that out. And so I went into my second year, and then I changed the way I dressed from androgynous to feminine. And now people did not really know what to do with me. Then they started realizing, oh, she's got boobs. Oh, she's got hips. She's got a big ass and stuff like that. And third year, those who now had the confidence would come and say, oh, first year I thought you were a guy. First year I wasn't sure whether you were male or female. Sometimes I saw you as a girl. Sometimes I saw you as a guy. And so I had that for a long time. And then I discovered that as a female, I actually liked myself as a female. But by then I had learned how to also be a male. And so I'm in this space where I can hang out with a whole bunch of guys, have discussions with guys, have a conversation with guys, to the point where they forget that I have breast. And then I have this space where I can have an intellectual conversation with a whole bunch of women without feeling like I'm odd. And so I grew up with that. Even my mother used to call me, she used to say, oh, I'm happy that I have both a male and female in one child. My biological mother said that to me when I was 12, and half of the time when she introduced me and people were trying to figure out whether I was male or female, she had a kick out of it. She got a major kick out of people trying to figure out what my gender was, and which was, I always found very, very interesting. As I look back in time, I found that interesting. I found it, I'm happy that she didn't restrict me to certain things, Dressing up as a boy, she didn't restrict me. She'll buy the clothes that I like. She'll buy the girl clothes and I'll give them out and stuff like that. But I'm happy for that kind of upbringing where I didn't have to choose or decide that I needed to be this person. I just grew up within that space. And so for me, I'm quite happy with myself, and I have no complaints.
I think you mentioned something really important about how when growing up, it was difficult for you to connect with other women. You had a lot of male friends. And I mean, I know, Yaga, you're Ghanaian, you're also Ghanaian, Elisabeth, and Molly, you're from America. How do you feel? Do you feel like it's difficult for you to connect with women in Accra, in Ghana? Just even the fact that there's been sort of these standards that have been instilled in the way in which women should dress, the way in which women should conduct themselves, and in many ways, a lot of women have sort of embodied some of those things. So, do you feel that as women who have sort of taken the different route, that it's difficult for you to make women friends in Accra, that it's difficult for you to connect with other women?
I had a very bizarre last 2 years because I was in 13 weddings, bridesmaids,
Wow.
and I was confused. It's like, why are you guys asking me to like do the dress and do the like? No, not 13 dresses. Sorry, not 13 weddings, but I had 13 dresses. I didn't know what I was just confused because I never felt like I was that close with a lot of those girls. I felt like I was always like the embarrassing one. It's like they're all going out, they're all looking cute with the weave, and I've got my little afro and like kinks up front, and but I realized that it's that thing again. You're looking at people through a certain lens, and not realizing that some of the conversations that I have with a lot of these different women who, for me, I felt like they valued their other more like girly, interactions, or where they would go like shopping or whatever, but like that thing of just you and me sitting down talking was actually valuable to so many of them. That was really eye-opening for me, because I'd always felt in school, all the way through school, because I had kind of the same thing. I was a tomboy. I didn't really care about what people thought, so I was never in the kind of girl group. I was always kind of by myself or with the guys, and I have 2 brothers, so it's easier for me as well to just, I know what guys are like, I know how to talk to them a bit better. So that was just very strange and interesting and new to have that experience of like, oh wow, I get to interact with these girls in a very girly way, and realize that it wasn't so bad.
For me, now that I've grown up, what I've decided to do is to try. I always ask this question, especially when I react negatively and I go back and I do an introspection. I'll be like, okay, if you were in the other person's shoes, how would you have felt with your own reaction? So I'm not trying to look at things from other people's perspective. It's not easy, and I'm not saying I get it right all the time. It's harder, but it gives me a better understanding of how other people may see my worldview, or how other people, how I can see other people's worldview. And I can say it's not that easy. It's frustrating, difficult, and extremely irritating, because I keep saying, last year I said, okay, I'm done with stupid people. This year I really did do away with stupid people. I cut myself off completely from everybody, and I'm now trying to reintegrate back into society. And what I decided to do was this conversation that I'm having. What is it? What am I trying to achieve with this conversation? Is it a necessary conversation? And that happens a lot on Facebook because I find myself on somebody has posted something, a feminist has posted something, and the guys are coming out bashing. There are a few females in there, women in there who are also bashing, and I'll be like, okay, and I go in and I'm trying to make sense of it and you can see that some people are just so ignorant, they're not ready. I'm like, okay, this is this person's worldview. Are you ready do you have the energy to actually go through this argument and see it to the end, or are you going to end it? And so I ask myself these questions, and so find out sometimes I just like, okay, I'm not going through this, or I see it and I'm about to make a comment. I'm like, really think about it before you do that. And so I do that. I'm doing that in the social media space, and I'm doing that with people that I encounter. Is it worth the energy that I need to put in? to educate this person or to be in this person's space or to let them into my space. If it's not worth it, move on. It's not necessary for you to be nice to everybody. So recently, I think the term I've started using is I'm going to be a snob. So I started being a snob. I'm learning, and it's really amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing how many people you can just get rid of. Yeah. So
I think like women are really socialized to be nice and to be available to others, and even if you. But I mean, as far as your question, I have one of my biggest challenges living here has been finding female friends, and I forgot it really, I mean, and I think it's because women who I relate to are as busy as I am. That's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
Like we run into each other at like the grocery store. It's like, oh hey, oh I'm doing 7 things. Oh I'm doing 7 things too. Okay, great, nice to see you. Like, you know, just like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's, I think the older you get, the harder it gets too. You're just more like in your thing and doing your thing. And now having a kid, I spend a lot more time in my domestic space, which means I get out, hang out a lot with like grandma. My probably my closest female friend right now is my baby's grandma, and she's awesome. So it's a positive thing, but it's like I think a lot of other women who have children are doing something similar. They're being, it's like that sphere is a more private sphere, and I'm trying to kind of just tell myself like this is a time for this, and it's not forever gonna be like this. Hopefully.